Greetings and welcome back to another iteration of MGTOW Talks. I'm here again with our friend Clive, CS MGTOW. And in light of the very interesting discussion that Nico Chomsky, in some circles known as Nico Chomsky, of course, had with the very famous internet blogger, is he a PUA? I guess he's kind of a PUA blogger, alpha male blogger, Rollo Tomassi. I thought it would be an interesting and perhaps informative discussion on what the there's so many people in the manosphere and different, factions, what the differences are between PUA and the different approaches. Because one thing that Nico Chomsky had focused on was more of an interview format rather than a discussion on the differences. And to be fair, Rollo was, and I like Rollo's stuff for the most part. I've read a lot of it online, at least. I haven't read his books. Pretty diplomatic towards MGTOW and what have you, but there were some points of contention that Nico really didn't follow very much or pursue, and I think that might be helpful. In addition, the general differences between PUA. So, Clive, if you were to, just off the top of your head, describe the primary differences between, say, PUA or being a pickup artist and a MGTOW or a man going his own way, what would you say those differences are?
That's a great question, Stardust. As far as I can see, the big difference would be, is the juice worth the squeeze? So for the PUA, the juice most certainly is, and it's about trying to use various, strategies and tactics to achieve intimacy with women. For a MGTOW, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, in maybe the medium or the long term, that there are just simply too many risks, from associating with women to make it worthwhile learning all of these strategies and tactics.
Continue.
So I was just going to say, another thing I've seen is that the PUAs tend to gloss over or possibly just kind of minimize the dangers associated with spending time with women. So I've seen a lot of content on PUA websites, and again, like yourself, I like Rollo. I'm actually quite a big fan of his work. I think, although he's a PUA, he's very, very curious intellectually, and he's explored a number of really, really wonderful topics on his blog. However, the kind of big concern that I have with a lot of PUAs is that, of course, they minimize the actual dangers that come with spending time with women. So if you get past her token resistance using PUA strategies, and she happens to change her mind the next day, you can just simply land in jail.
Yeah, I think before we go on to those critical differences, this is an important point to underscore. We can talk about alpha and beta and all of this stuff, and sorry, I'm a bit under the weather, and all these differences between different kinds of men and who's successful with women. But at the end of the day, given the Western system, particularly in the Anglosphere, which I just talked about, the law doesn't care about how alpha you are, and if you're alpha enough to seduce a woman into the sack and she feels regret, even a week later, there are potential problems there. There's nothing in the PUA literature that I've seen or read that has it's kind of as an escape plan. It's like, well, you do this, and then if she happens to accuse you of false rape, you use your alpha strategy to, to exit in this direction. There's nothing about that. It's just about sealing the deal, as it were. Do this, do X, Y, Z, and then you're successful. And we live in a society, particularly in the English-speaking world, places like the UK and Canada and the United States, where there can be some really serious consequences to interacting with women in a sexual manner. And I'm not, and once again, I've never been prescriptive. I don't interact with women that way, but for those reasons, among other reasons. And if you want to do that, that's fine. There's nothing un-MGTOW about that, but at least as a man going your own way, you're aware of those potential risks. PUAs, I wouldn't even say they downplay those risks. They just wholesale ignore them. They don't even talk about them as if they don't exist.
Oh, for sure. Roosh did actually, I think it was about a year ago, because I still do read occasionally some of the posts on his website. I've forgotten whether it was on his main website or his Rouge V website, unfortunately, but he did release a guide a couple of years ago on how to handle false rape accusations. And I was not impressed at all. So basically, it involved a series of behaviors after the sex act. So let's say, his kind of example, as far as I can remember, was that if a woman sends you a message saying, look, you shouldn't have raped me last night, or something to that effect, or if she says it in your presence, his recommendation was to go very, very quiet, look her in the eye, and then and then to essentially send her a series of text messages to try and elicit a response from her that the sex was indeed consensual. Now, whether that works or not is another thing entirely, but I'm just trying to put myself in the kind of shoes of a man who's going through that, who's just desperately hoping that a woman sends a message back, just, I guess, recanting her accusation of false rape, saying, okay, well, yes, I did agree to have sex with you, but now, that's not a nice place to be.
It's a horrible fallacy. It's also known as a loaded question. There's no way to answer the loaded question fallacy correctly. It's one of the worst ones. Sure. Did you enjoy raping me? So you say no. Okay, you say there's no good answer. You're kind of screwed. Sure. And this is horrible, a horrible way to approach things. But of course, it's entrapment.
Oh, for sure.
If someone poses the loaded question to you, then there's no way you can get out of it. Not really. You can just walk away. I guess it's probably the best answer, but that doesn't sound like a good strategy to.
I don't think it's going to be very, very effective. When a woman has decided after the fact that she, for some reason, just didn't want that sexual experience, if she decides to go and cry rape, I don't think there are very many strategies at that point other than a good lawyer and just absolutely having no contact with her, except through that lawyer, that's going to help.
And I think, for better or worse, having the reputation of being a PUA actually damages your case and damages, at least in the eyes of the public.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not saying PUAs are bad-tempered men or unethical men or whatever, but the image of the PUA is this sort of sexual stalker, if you will, who flits about bars and under the darkness of night and tries to pick up women. And I mean, this is not a wholesome image for public consumption necessarily.
For sure.
And it just seems to sort of par for the course. Comes with the territory.
It does.
That people would look at you probably more inclined to believe the things, even if they're completely untrue, said about you as a PUA.
I agree. I mean, the very, very specific PUA behaviors, the kind of verbal gymnastics that kind of go into it. In many ways, if a woman discovers the guy is very, very sexually, active after the fact and he's a PUA, I would hypothesize, and again, I don't have any data to support that, but it's just, I would hypothesize that would make her more likely to go and file a false, kind of rape accusation, because of the way women view their sexuality. Women view their sexuality as a precious gift to only be given to the most kind of deserving guys, or to the guy that she wants to long-term, she basically wants to have a long-term partnership potentially with the guy. If she finds out after the fact that he's used, pre-canned pickup lines to kind of pick her up, just knowing the female mind state as well,
a victim of manipulation, essentially.
Nobody, male or female, enjoys being a victim of such things, which is actually why we have the fact that women think it's okay to have sex with a guy drunk and then be able to cry rape later on, because they view, the imbibing of alcohol to get her into bed as sexual manipulation. And
to be fair, I don't really see this as victimhood, allowing yourself to be manipulated by PUA techniques. I mean, but in her eyes, of course.
For sure.
He used the PUA magical incantations on me, and,
exactly.
and I fell victim to him, and the spell has been lifted now, and I see his nefarious intent and blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
I think there's definitely, there's always that risk. I don't know, we don't have any data, and we don't know how many PUAs are out there with their kinds of experiences. And obviously, people who engage in PUA activity, they're going to only report the positive things and things you see on the web and whatever.
For sure.
But in my observation, many guys who were involved in PUA, they kind of eventually gravitate towards MGTOW. I mean, I've only had him on a few times. My friend High Lord Biochemist, he used to be involved in the PUA community in the United States, and he moved on. Nico Chomsky, or Chomsky, whatever his name is, he kind of was involved in PUA, and he moved on. So I think that despite the superficial success, the PUA wisdom is not sufficient for a man craving knowledge about himself and his place in the world, because you're still working within this framework of alpha and beta. And I would argue, particularly if you're kind of a MGTOW that, I don't like the word shuns, but really doesn't freely associate with women, at least intentionally, for any specific purpose other than, ordering a bar wench to give you a drink if you're at a cafe or something, then these terms have no application. Alpha and beta are only meaningful if you want to grant them meaning at all.
Agreed.
In the context of interacting with women. If your life is essentially interaction free from women, then alpha and beta really have no application in your life. And alpha or beta, they mean nothing. And everything PUAs talk about, it's been talked about ad nauseum, but still, it's about your relationship and perceptions with regards to women. There's nothing beyond that, really. This idea of self-actualization and realization, even if we were to buy that as the party slogan on the part of the PUA community, it's done. One is self-actualized, in air quotes, and self-realized because you're trying to essentially get laid. It's not because you're looking for greater answers, you're looking for some kind of peace of mind for yourself. It's kind of the same old activities. It's just you have a new bag of tricks that you can apply. And yeah, like I said, Rollo has posted some great stuff. His stuff is great as far as understanding female mentality and male mentality with regards to females. But it doesn't, that kind of stuff doesn't really offer any insight beyond that. And one thing I just mentioned prior to the talk is that, and I think you agree, is that there's almost no discussion in PUA communities about male friendship, male socializing with each other, and really that vital component of intra-male interaction.
For sure.
Maybe because they assume it's a given, but frankly speaking, men don't spend a lot of time thinking about their own relationships to other men. And this is something that I find completely lacking in the PUA community, and this is something we do talk about and address in MGTOW, and indeed I think we think it's a pretty important thing.
Agreed.
Building and forming friendships and relationships with men.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and again, just in my life, my best friend for sure is a female, but some of the most rewarding and fulfilling relationships I've ever had are with other males, because there's clearly, in most social interactions you'll have with a female, there's always an underlying kind of sexuality there, unless there's just absolutely no kind of, maybe she's 90 and you're 20, but there's always an underlying kind of, sexuality. So what I tend to find is that most men will have friendships with women because they want to sleep with her, and she will have a friendship with him because, again, she wants a kind of maybe a male, harem or something. However, I just personally find that, the fact that my male friends don't have a biological clock, is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I know they're not trying to maneuver me into anything. And also I can just be forever honest with them. If my male friend says something that's really, really stupid, I can say, look, dude, that was really, really fucking stupid. Try saying that to a female, and no matter how, I guess, long you've had a friendship with her, you just always have to phrase things in a different way. So personally, I find that male friendships and what we espouse within MGTOW, it's a really, really excellent thing. And you're right that the PUAs really neglect that. It's almost as if within the PUA circle, if it's not happening with a woman, it's not worth discussing.
Yeah. I mean, and it's true that men naturally form bonds with each other, but it's just not something that they spend a lot of time thinking about. And indeed, MGTOW offers the possibility of strengthening those things, because one of the greatest tools that going your own way can give you is realizing how important those relationships are with other men. Because at the end of the day, those are probably the people in your life that are going to be there for you. It's certainly not going to be the women who are going to be there for you.
Agreed.
Maybe if you're lucky, your mother, maybe,
Sure.
But even that's hit or miss. That's just kind of a rule of thumb rather than a hard rule.
Agreed.
So this is completely neglected. And speaking of Rollo Tomassi, when he was talking to Nico, his one criticism of MGTOW, he's pretty diplomatic about it, was that he's sort of worried. This is the term he's worried that about these guys who isolate themselves. Now, I suppose complete and utter isolation is one thing. I don't advocate that, and I don't practice that myself. I don't living in a hut in the woods. Okay, although there are some mystics apparently that have some fantastic experiences that way, but. He really was focusing on isolation from women. There's something really fundamentally wrong with that, or they're missing out on certain things. And this does kind of go back to the question of age. Obviously, if you're middle-aged like myself and have had some experiences, you don't feel quite as much that you're missing out on stuff because you've had. I guess in PUA language, I've had my share of, Asian, black, and white pussy and all this stuff. So it's, I've sampled the waters or whatever, but it doesn't really compute if you take into account these other things and the male friendships and relationships.
Yeah, agreed.
People build.
Sorry, go ahead.
Please, no, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think you've raised a very, very important issue there, that the PUAs really, really play on the idea that if you're not having sex regularly, you're missing a tremendously important part of life. That if you're not investing very, very significant resources, time, and effort into getting a woman to spread her legs, that somehow life is passing you by and you're incomplete. And that I find very, very destructive for the male psyche. The idea that if you're essentially not having sex every night, that you're not a complete male. This is, I guess, as you kind of said earlier, just one of the kind of fundamental differences we have within MGTOW.
Yeah, and one thing that always puzzled me, I had an encounter with a PUA years ago, several of them on my channel, and they just couldn't. They're so enamored of women and so bedazzled by their allure that they can't even grasp that a man might not be that impressed by it.
Yeah.
It's to them it's just not possible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like a junk food addict who says, "How could you not eat pizza?"
Exactly.
Eat pizza. It's the same thing. They cannot fathom it, and so there must be something wrong with you, right? Because if they don't get it, it's always that kind of subjective experience.
For sure.
That a lot of people use when they're trying to understand other people's situations. It always comes from the subjective, personal I perspective, and they just think, well, I couldn't do that, so it's just not possible.
Agreed.
And I think that's where they're sort of entrapped, because they literally they're enthralled by women. I mean, end of the day, no matter how much self-actualization they practice, or as I think as Tomassi had put it, point of reference or center of reference is yourself. It all revolves around women. They might do other things on the side, but the core of that is making sure you're your point of reference is yourself in your quest to get a woman to spread her legs for you.
Exactly. Well, just in terms of the kind of PUAs that you mentioned that you had an encounter with, years ago, and I've had similar kind of encounters with PUAs. I've had a couple of friends who were pretty prolific PUAs, and that kind of, disbelief that there can be men out there who genuinely are not that, impressed by the average female out there, or even, the above average females. From my experience, it comes from a kind of PUA point of limited sexual experiences. I don't know, for example, like most guys, but when I first started having sex, it was tremendous. It was, for me at least, it was mind-blowing. And if somebody had sat me down at the time and said, look, in about 10 years, yes, you're still going to enjoy sex, but you won't chase it with the same ferocity. You won't care as much. You won't allow a woman to manipulate you through it in the way that she does now. So if she, for example, says, hey, look, where are you? And you say, look, I'm out with my friends. And she says that, well, if you don't come home, we're not having sex. And you just kind of rush home as I did when I was still in my blue pill days. If somebody would have said to me, look, at one point you won't give a shit, I would have said, no, look, it's impossible. Such was the experience at the time, but I was very new to it. And that's what I tend to see with a lot of the PUA guys. For sure, there are probably guys within the PUA movement who are racking up some very, very serious numbers with regards to, sexual experiences with women. If that's what they want to do, hey, good luck to them. But I would guess that a lot of those guys aren't having that many sexual experiences and didn't come from a starting point of actually having slept with a lot of women. So for the first time in their lives, they've learned a technique which allows them to have sex with women, and it's such a novel thing. It's like I guess a child opening its first Christmas present. It's so amazing, and
Well, it's not just that it's novel, because I can recall my first long-term relationship I had between 20 and 22. It lasted about over 2 years. This was the woman who tried to hit me with a car and chop my dick off. Whoa. But I've mentioned this many times. I mean, there were two things about that relationship. Well, three things, actually. I mean, totally superficial retrospectively. One thing, she cooked amazingly well. And the sex, I've never had such good sex before or after. It was insane. And she had, well, I mean, at the time I was obsessed with these things. A huge, huge breast. They're like F's or G's, and she wasn't. I mean, she was curvy, but she wasn't fat. It was like, wow, right? And I was just enthralled by that, and I stayed in a totally fucked up relationship for the sake of the jugs and for the sake of the sex and the home cooked meals. I was in between the ages of 20 and 22. It was pretty idiotic of me retrospectively, but it was just so, at that age, this drive, and it was really good.
Yeah.
I'd only had sex once or twice before at 19, and then I met her, and I just, wow, this is so much better than the first time. And as I said, ever since, never had that good sex again. So she's sort of still this at least in that regard, this model of, good sex. But once you have that, and you've had a bunch of experiences, and I should point out that Barbarossa, a couple of months ago, had that encounter with one of these PUAs. I don't remember his name, Matt Forney or something. And these guys, I mean, I'm not going to criticize anyone's appearance. I don't care. But I mean, these guys, they don't look like they're. Now maybe I'm wrong, but some of these guys don't look like they're bedding tons of women all the time, and they're Rico Suave or whatever. I do get the feeling that a lot of PUAs, not all of them, are kind of socially awkward guys who still believe in the sort of the mystic allure of women, and that if they achieve this, they get a woman to spread her legs, then this is sort of a divine act almost, and sure. And maybe they even master some of these techniques and they succeed, and they feel completely validated, and their entire existence is just lights up. But I mean, barring that insane episode I had, that relationship, I mean, the sex before that wasn't particularly good. And then the years after, every now and then some sex was okay, but it wasn't really, it's something I could have probably, frankly speaking, skipped and spent time home wanking off. I mean, it wasn't that good.
For sure.
And I think this is something they're missing. I can't imagine, and maybe it's just because I've only slept with 20 plus women instead of hundreds or something like that. I can't imagine that just randomly having sex with a bunch of women is actually sexually satisfying, given the fact that it's so hit or miss whether or not the sex is good. You got to wear a condom, which that can have an influence on how much you feel, and it just become. I just can't imagine why that's fulfilling.
For sure, I agree with you. And again, like yourself, having slept with enough women, now I don't see the point unless I'm seriously horny, and then I'll go out and try and pick a girl up. Otherwise, I've had sex with enough of them that I know that it's most of the time not worth the hassle unless my body is at that time just saying have sex, which fair enough. What I would love to also discuss with you is just the kind of concepts that most PUAs base their discussion around. So this idea that the human male can be separated into very, very distinct camps. And this is often fluid. So according to PUA kind of, let's say, ideology, for want of a better word, you're either a beta, alpha, sigma, omega, or whatever. And I take I take real exception to these separations, because the way they use these terms alpha and beta are simply inaccurate. There's this idea within kind of PUA circles that the alpha male rules the world. That very highly testosterone-driven, hugely muscular guy, that he rules the world. It's nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, in reality,
what the PUA would say to you, Clive? Said, "You're just saying this because you're beta. You're so beta,
man." All of the individuals who have genuinely changed history for the better. I'm not talking about some guy who just goes and maybe sacks a town, or and just tortures everything, because that doesn't take a lot.
Brings the women to his harem.
Yeah. But everything that got us here so far, from the clothing we wear to the fact that we have flight and to the fact that we have electricity, these were developed by the beta males, who a lot of the PUAs absolutely despise. This kind of, what they term the beta mindset. So that basically means working diligently at things, forming alliances, being cooperative, saving, investing for the future. So these kind of traditional beta characteristics formed our civilization. It wasn't the alpha male, working out in the gym 7 times a week, and I'm not knocking that. I work out in the gym as well, but there's a kind of skewed idea that the alpha male got us to where we are. That it's this guy who was physically dominant and just simply fucked all the women, and that's why we're here today, and that's what we should aspire to. And as I just take great exception to that, because it's not grounded in reality.
To be fair, I don't know if Rollo would. I mean, I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I'm not a huge fan of PUAs, but I don't know if he would frame it that way. I think Rollo would say, he's put it this way, that alpha and beta are a state of mind, and it really, it's kind of fluid. You can sort of transform. I don't necessarily even believe this. You can transform yourself into a quote unquote alpha from a beta. He uses terms like alpha minus and alpha plus and beta. I don't know if the PUAs actually even take the time to think about that level of depth of, this sort of traditional image of an alpha who goes around reaming women left and right, and clubs them over the head, and then the beta. I think betas, a beta is kind of a simp, a guy in their mind, a guy who kowtows to women's wishes, who the nice guy, the guy who what is it Roland called the equalist, the guy who's trying to make her his equal. And I think it's more along those lines. But I mean, apart from that, I totally agree with you. I mean, the quote-unquote beta workhorse provider, unfortunately or fortunately, has been a much more important building block of civilization than the traditional image of the alpha guy who sacks the village, murders the men, and drags the women back and inseminates all of them within the course of a day. I mean, he's reproductively successful that way. He might be feared until he's deposed, but I mean, what is it again? Is something like 1% of the Asian population has Genghis Khan's genes?
Oh yes, for sure. He was very prolific in that.
He was, as far as I know, every time he conquered someplace, the men would be either enslaved, murdered, and the women were dragged off to the harem.
Yeah.
And this is really good, effective method at spreading your genes, but that doesn't do a whole lot in the way of building things and being constructive.
Agreed. And again, that therein lies my chief challenges.
I think the problem, Clive, is that we don't really know. It's such a nebulous term, and even in PUA circles, alpha and beta. I can only go by what Rollo has written about and what he said in talks, where he says it's this sort of fluid category and it's a mental category and you can transform yourself. I don't even believe that.
Yeah.
If you're a guy who's, really shit luck, like you're 160 centimeters tall, you have a tendency to put on adipose tissue, get fat, it's going to be hard to be an alpha guy that way.
For sure. It's the Matt Forney kind of situation.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, the man, and again, it is what it is. The man looks as he looks. Nothing is ever going to change that. It's going to be very, very difficult, unless he massively overcompensates in another way to pull off the kind of typical PUA alpha thing. And I do agree with you. I personally, from what I see of Rollo's work, and I like a lot of his work, he's a little bit less kind of dogmatic about the whole kind of alpha beta thing. And for him, it is very, very much a state of mind. I guess I was referring to a lot of the other PUAs like Roosh and Royce.
Yeah, I think Roosh and the rest of those guys are intellectually a significant step downwards from Rollo.
For sure. No, Rollo's a cut above, for sure.
Rollo's the only one I'll read. I wouldn't say consistently, but I read more often than not. Eventually, I'm going to order his book. I just have other expenses at the moment. And, the other guys are just seem to be full of hogwash. This publicity stunt, for example, that I think Roosh V is involved in Montreal and Canada. I haven't really been following it, but basically fighting SJWs and blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. It seems to me just an attempt to get publicity and become more popular.
For sure.
But I think one can, of course, improve oneself, but I do think that we're kind of stuck to a large extent with our lot genetically. And if you're not born Brad Pitt or some what was the guy who played in the Superman film? Naturally handsome guy, English actor. If you're not one of these guys, then you're gonna have to compensate. Of course, you can go to the gym, you can make money, you can do these things, but I don't think it's quite as fluid as Rollo claims.
Agreed.
It's just all this kind of state of mind thing.
For sure.
A lot of it is a state of mind, but some things are not a state of mind. Even in the talked about a lot of what he said. The most alpha men, or the greatest number of alpha men, are actually found in prison.
Oh yes, for sure. That most alpha guys are, as you said, they're in the penitentiary. And these guys, undoubtedly, they're alpha. They're socially dominant. They're aggressive. Very, very high levels of testosterone.
They don't brook competition. They probably murdered their male competition. Yeah.
For sure. But for me, I guess that the PUA, in its purest form, is the end result of hypergamy. Kind of run wild. So when most guys cannot access the kind of dating market, the PUA almost naturally kind of springs forth, because guys then kind of think, okay, well, I still want to have sex, and now I just got to try all these tactics and, read a body of work to try and do it. Whether it's successful or not, for sure it's, possibly.
Well, this was touched on, I think, in the talk with Nico. Basically, Nico had put it, Dick is kind of the price of dick isn't that high, and of course the price of pussy isn't either. But more importantly, I think the whole PUA thing evolved, at least in part, and maybe even MGTOW did to a certain extent as well, because the whole traditional setup of you get married and the wife, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, obeys you, and you go to work and you come home and get your blowjob, your sandwich, and your paper and your slippers, and that model just has ceased to work for decades now.
Yeah.
And out of the rubble of the chaos of our society, you've seen different kinds of, I guess, factions evolve. Even MGTOW is somehow a product of that, since a lot of MGTOW are just MGTOW because their pipe dream of marriage just won't work anymore. And as far as the PUAs are concerned, they're just thinking, well, I'd like to get married, but I guess that's not an option. I'll just run around and try to get women to spread their legs for me.
For
It's
sure,
the next best thing.
For sure. And I guess with most PUAs, just from my personal experiences with them, and reading a lot of what they put online, they're looking for that one special girl. So it's about, is she XYZ? And did she make me wait for it for a week before she put out? And okay, she may be the one. And even if they won't go on, even if they won't kind of go on fully into a marriage, they'll still do a kind of long-term soft relationship, which for me, I would just find a hellish place to be. A long-term relationship, no matter how alpha you are or whatever, women still bitch and moan and require a lot of...
Well, that's the whole thing, right? Their response to that, I mean, Nico talked to Rollo about this and how, a lot of men worry about constantly having to control hypergamy and this and that. But it seems to me that based on the data that we have, there are two really important elements here. That one, it seems to be the case based on observation, based on what we can observe, that women, the only functional relationship you can have with a woman is one where you're an authoritarian and she defers to your authority.
Yes.
This seems to be what the evidence tells us. And that means that you're going to have to, put your foot down, etc. She is subordinate to you. We know that despite the claims, and I agree with Rollo on this, of egalitarian society, that's not what women really want.
Yes.
And we were talking about this before. Fair enough. If you want to have some kind of relationship or a marriage or something in between, you're going to have to be an authority figure, and when you go out for ice cream, you're going to have to decide whether it's chocolate or vanilla.
Yeah.
You might be completely indifferent to the choice of both, and I usually am. But if you don't say, woman, we're having vanilla ice cream, then she can resent you for that because you need to take charge. And you can't just say, whatever, I don't care. Because God forbid she needs to make a decision for herself or or even say, I'm going to have chocolate, you can have whatever you want. She actually can resent you for that.
Oh, for sure. Oh, I experienced that with the kind of two girlfriends ago, where we walked up and down a street, crossed the road, walked up and down the street in the opposite direction to find a restaurant. Two of them looked good. We both were on a kind of vegan organic diet, so we found two. And she said, okay, which one shall we go to? And I said, look, I really don't care. They both look good. I really don't care. And I said, okay, whatever, just, yeah. And she just flipped out. She said, well, it seems, I want a guy who can take charge. And I was like, are you serious?
I can imagine.
This is over. Like, who cares where we eat? They're both pretty identical. I really don't care, and I don't want to have to take control in that way over a person's life. If it was down to myself, I'll simply walk into the nearest one.
I mean, you already have a daughter, as I understand.
Oh, yeah.
So you gotta. That's kind of your role as an authoritarian.
Oh, for sure.
When it comes to a female partner, this is essentially the same expectation. You're supposed to enter into a managerial position with a female.
Exactly.
In order to keep the relationship running and without too much friction, you need to be the authoritarian. You need to sort of deftly deflect her shit tests in a kind of funny but also strong and authoritarian manner and all these things. And despite Rollo's claims that this is just over time, it becomes natural and all of this, I have no interest personally in ordering people around, and I just want to do my own thing. And if I'm imagine if you're hanging out with a male friend and you want to get ice cream, and he insisted, well, there's pistachio, chocolate, and vanilla. Decide.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm gonna have what I'm gonna have. You have what.
Exactly.
Just giving shit about that. It would be insane. I don't know, man. I know we've been friends for 15 years, but this pistachio thing, I'm sorry. You need to take charge.
Exactly. You need to man up.
Man up with the ice cream. It's and here's the thing, though, is that one point I agree with him on is that given this sort of equalist, egalitarian society we live in, even though women crave this sort of authoritarian figure and that she can defer to because she doesn't know what the fuck she wants, so you have to tell her what she wants, the egalitarian conditioning has also kind of built in this sort of resentment into her. And I remember encountering this as well in my previous relationship where the woman, this girl, my Korean ex-girlfriend says, I'm bored. And this is basically, tell me what to do. And I say, we can do that. I offer a bunch of choices because, I sometimes took authoritarian position, but I kind of wanted to do my own thing. I know, at the time I just thought, well, she's an adult woman. I didn't quite realize that. So I said, okay. Bitching and complaining about different things. I'll say, we're going to go to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. We get there, she's pouting the whole time. And I said, well, we decided to go in here. And said, well, I don't like it here. I said, well, I asked you, we gave you 4 or 5 different choices, what we could have done, gone to the cinema, blah, blah, blah. You didn't want to. And then she just sort of pouts and says, I don't know. And I'm just thinking to myself at the time, I can't wait to go back and just play video games.
For sure. Well, when another adult human being places upon your shoulders the full responsibility for their entertainment, as in the case of your ex-girlfriend, or let's say within a marriage, for their sustenance, it's a very, very difficult place for a man to be. Just having to think about their every need and how they'll respond to everything. I mean, that's just a level of responsibility that I will not have any part in. If another adult human being can't just make a decision on which ice cream to have, or if she experiences boredom, where to find I guess entertainment or alleviation of that boredom, just they're going to transfer that stress on the guy. And I had this with my ex as well, that she basically decided to stop thinking the moment we entered a relationship. This was my ex-wife. And all critical thought were going to go out the window. Money management skills were going to go out the window. Just any relevant skill to just like regular life. And everything was going to be up to me to make a decision on. And then at one point, I stupidly fell for this, and I started to make decisions. And all I got was just bitching and moaning about how I'm not letting her self-actualize, or how how I'm acting like a bully. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the problem. I mean, I guess Rollo has mastered this, right? But his story, which I don't doubt is true, he said, when I decided we were going to move to Orlando for my job, my wife didn't challenge me. She just said, when are we leaving? I mean, the problem, he just kind of blew off or brushed off the idea that even a man as alpha as he is, to use his terminology, or I think what he called himself, an alpha minus, whatever, his sort of mastery of this authoritarian figure persona, that the law doesn't care about that. Once again, the law doesn't care about that, and if she feels resentful, and maybe his wife doesn't, I have a feeling he makes a lot of money, so women are opportunistic. Why would she fucking divorce him if he makes that money and she can live a good life? That makes sense. But in other cases, if she resents him for whatever reason, makes up a false charge or something like that, it doesn't matter how authoritarian. In fact, she can in the egalitarian society we live in, she can cite the fact that he was a sort of tyrant in the relationship.
Exactly.
Telling her what to do, not allowing her freedom when she was getting mad at him for not telling her what to do. It's such a conundrum. And one thing that really bothered me about that talk, I have to say, I like most of what Rollo has to say, is that instead of giving men the absolute necessary wisdom and intelligent answer of saying, don't get married, period. I'm married, but he said, I'm not this or that, and if you want to get... That was just a bad answer, man. And if he ever hears that, I'm sorry, that was just stupid. Whatever your alphaness is or not, there's no reason to take the risk of entering into a contract with the state, with a woman who essentially has the state behind her. It's insane to say, well, I'm not really against this or for this. He should have just said, look, I'm married. I became aware of this way too late in my marriage. I managed my marriage fine, but all you younger guys don't get married. That would have been the appropriate and correct answer, and he didn't do that.
For sure. Well, I mean, just in terms of his website, I have seen him put that kind of information there to say, look, if I could do this again, for sure, I would not get married. But for sure, I did kind of note his answer yesterday wasn't as emphatic as I believe it, and I guess you believe it should have been on the topic of marriage, because for sure, whether you're, lower, like level 5 alpha, or, or a level 2 beta, that divorce is a brutal process, and alimony and child support payments will have to be made regardless of how alpha one, I guess, perceives oneself to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to be fair to him, I think he was trying to be diplomatic in that context. He was trying to be, appealing to the audience that was largely MGTOW, and that makes sense. And I imagine he would have taken a slightly different tone to a more PUA-oriented audience. But I just, for myself, I don't... And I realize that you do need to have a functional relationship. You need to be an authoritarian. But given the society we live in, you can't really be that authoritarian anymore. Not entirely.
Agreed.
At best, in bed, 50 Shades of Grey seems to tell it all. You have no idea. I mean, well, of course you probably do. Lots of women love this sort of rape fantasy and
for sure,
and all of this, and it's very telling. And they even like being told. I mean, I've had relationships like that where I just another Korean girlfriend I had years ago when I was in South Korea. I mean, it kind of did work that way because it wasn't that egalitarian thing. I would just say we're going to do this, and she would just follow me. She would just had no mind, no will of her own, really. I mean, I guess it was some people's dream. It only lasted for about 6 or 7 months because I had to leave the country. But during that time, there was no real friction. I said, we're going to eat this. I would, I mean, frankly speaking, I could have sex whenever I wanted. I would just sit her down on my bed and frankly speaking, stick my dick in her mouth. I didn't even ask her.
Wow.
It was just, she was just completely pliant. And I mean, I guess this is every guy's dream, but towards the end, I was kind of happy I was going.
Oh, yeah.
One, because I was leaving Korea and I was kind of miserable there for the most part. But the other thing was,
the boredom.
It was boring.
Yeah, the boredom.
Like, I got a robot slave here. That's great. What else do I do with it?
For sure.
And it became my responsibility to take care of the robot slave. I mean, she would call, and then I'd have to make plans when I just couldn't be asked. I'd have to do this. I'd have to do that. I'd have to be creative. There was an expectation that I had to spend time with her. That was something I had to do. But that time, I was the one to delegate and sort of divvy up the time and how and what we would spend it. And she just had no mind of her own. It was, I guess, a lot of these guys' dream. But for me, towards the end, especially, it was novel in the beginning because I had never experienced that. But towards the end, especially, it was just, wow, this is great. That she has no mind of her own, just a drone. And it was actually it gave me a lot of perspective into a certain kind of mentality a lot of women have. And I think this dream of, for example, the Eastern submissive wife, I guess that's what she was. I mean, it was a girlfriend at the time. If you want to have the best case scenario, someone's not going to talk back to you or anything, that's basically going to get. You're going to get a robot slave who has no mind of her own, no will of her own, and it's like watching over a child, essentially.
Agreed. And those are some of the most dangerous women in relationships, not because of any particularly kind of nefarious agenda, but she has made it very, very clear that the entire responsibility for her sustenance, her livelihood, her entertainment, her safety, it's all on your shoulders. You know what I mean? So you'll have to, let's say, for example, she gets pregnant. You pretty much know she's never going to work again. It's all about just kind of sitting down, being a passive recipient of goods and services over 70, 80 years.
Well, to be fair,
okay.
She used to pay for my meals.
Oh, wow,
I mean,
okay.
It was kind of, she got me gifts. It just, what annoyed me was a complete lack of soul.
I see.
It's just, there was the condition that I had to spend time with her. She'd call me up, and then it wasn't even really a question. I would just have to, delegate the task for the day. Today we're going to go to the cinema, then we're going to do that, then you're going to suck my dick. And it literally, I didn't say it that way, but it was just that sort of, and I just found it smothering too, or suffocating. Because I always had to spend time. That was one condition. I always had to spend time with her, and so it was a kind of a weird setup. But I learned then that I just kind of want to do my own thing, and I don't really want to lord over anyone. I know a lot of guys get off of that, whether sexually or otherwise. The sexual thing, I guess, is okay, but having to fucking tell someone what to do, where we're going to eat, what film we're going to watch, it's just...
It's draining. It's absolutely draining.
Yeah. You lose your own life in the process, and it was only about a half a year, but I'd never want to really experience that again.
Agreed.
And in a Western context where they have the state and everything behind them, it becomes a little bit more complicated, and they can offer a lot more resistance. I mean, I can't imagine a Western female who is going to behave that way without any sort of resistance. I get what Rollo is saying, and certainly there's certain things that I think he's spot on about women.
Oh, for sure.
And hypergamy and the stages, and I don't like the term love, but the way he uses these terms, idealistic love, which is male love, and opportunistic love, it's accurate in describing how men and women approach these things. But neither he nor most PUAs can get away from this. It's still got to focus around women. It still has to be about women. And I think that's why the MGTOW concept is so foreign to them.
Yes.
Sure, there are plenty, Barbaros has had a relationship for 2 years now. A MGTOW date who have relationships, okay. But that's not the focal point of what's going on in MGTOW. That's kind of just another activity. It's like, I don't know, playing racquetball. It's just something else you're doing.
Agreed. It also seems that the PUAs really, I mean, the kind of segments of the PUA audience who understand the kind of dangers of, let's say, married life, the child support racket and everything. But these guys don't understand, they underestimate the extent to which men run on autopilot the moment we get with a woman. So while, for example, you can use a lot of strategies and tactics and dress a certain way to get a woman into bed, the moment most guys get into relationships with women, it's full autopilot. And I've seen this again and again and again. And that autopilot, because I've had personal friends who started out as PUAs and have then gone on to then propose to girlfriends and get married. In fact, one of them is doing so. He's already proposed and he's getting married very, very soon. despite my pleas, which are falling on deaf ears. So a lot of the PUAs or individuals who kind of take in that PUA literature, the content seems to be okay for getting women into bed, but then, of course, it can't do anything about the autopilot that drives men to want to inseminate women and women to want to get pregnant. And I would just imagine that there are lots of very, very unhappy men out there who are now maybe holding 2 kids, or 3 children, which they didn't really realize was part of the equation when you get with a woman. They just thought it's the sex and behaving alpha and like eating out all the time and having that's the kind of 3-month honeymoon period. Then there's years of changing nappies and school fees and.
Well, right, but an alpha guy doesn't do. I mean, that's the thing. He would argue. I imagine if Rollo were here, he'd say, well, that's the thing. This alpha mindset, it transcends the time. The different time periods. You're always alpha, and I mean, this is not my view necessarily, but I think that's how he would describe it. And so, yeah, you get past the whole seduction thing, and you impregnate her or whatever, but she's still taking your orders basically. And I think in a way, a lot of it is just luck. So many things in life, luck.
Exactly.
I mean, you could have had a wife that is, I guess, less submissive, less deferring to authority, and then one little thing might have gone wrong, and then boom, right? It's just luck of the draw. And they did talk about this awaken while married kind of phenomenon, either MGTOW or PUA wise, where you realize that you've been a quote unquote beta provider your entire life, and your wife's essentially been exploiting you and doesn't give a shit about you and blah blah blah, and but this has been for the past 2 decades and it's all too late. And he does stress Nico actually read out a passage where he says, if you're single in your mid-30s and reasonably successful, you have something that you have a kind of wealth that very few men have at that age, freedom and time.
Agreed.
And that's certainly true. I mean, for myself, I can't imagine what that kind of life is like, because I have some time schedule sometimes, but it's just it's pretty flexible. I almost never, barring certain appointments which are rare, don't have to get up at a specific time. I can leave the house when I want. That kind of life is so alien to me. The life that is just burdened with all these things that they have to do. I don't even know. I mean, I can't imagine that right now, because for quite some time now I've been living a life of freedom and relative relaxation. And I do talk to people sometimes whose life isn't like that, and they just say, "You have no idea." And I say, "Yeah, you're right. I don't want to know."
Well, the awakened while married place is possibly one of the most difficult states for a man, because he sees a lot of other guys around him, possibly, particularly if he's awakened while married and he understands MGTOW. And all these guys are kind of doing things on their own terms. And every single day, possibly, having to mow the lawn, do the dishes with the missus, put the kids to bed. It's a very, very difficult place. And again, my hope is that guys pick up MGTOW before they ever get into, hopefully even into relationships. And again, I love the video you did, which you kind of explained that, look, MGTOW is a prophylaxis. It's a prophylaxis against just a very, very superficially lived life where, that revolves around going to work in the morning, coming home to the nagging wife, a 2-week vacation, just a kind of prepackaged life. It's a real prophylaxis against pain and suffering on many, many levels. And, for me, the PUA ideology, and again, I'm not in any way suggesting Rollo espouses that side of the PUA ideology, but I know actually he actually says, like, don't do the marriage thing. But with a lot of the PUAs, it's just kind of funneling men into the sausage-making machine that is the modern world at its most destructive end. just find a woman who has a pretty high notch count by that point, settle down with her, and work your life away for her benefit. And I just can't see that benefiting men in any way.
Yeah. Well, of course, once again, Rollo would say, no, it's all about you. You're the center point. Everything else is sort of it kind of reminds me of, I'm sure you read Ayn Rand at some point in time in your youth, and then moved past her like most people.
Yes, I did.
That I did. And I'm paraphrasing. I think it was John Galt who said this. It was either in a speech or in a conversation. He says something effective, I'm on my own journey, and if you want to come with me, that's fine, but I'm just going to keep on plowing ahead. I think that's what he would argue.
Absolutely.
And, I think there's a lot of merit to be said for that, and I think that's essentially what MGTOW is.
For sure.
But when you're already married and someone who, you pointed out, he's at the time, he said, no, we're going to go to Orlando, we're going to Florida, which is a fucking disgusting swamp. Why is Florida's beyond me? But, what if he said, we're going to go to, North Dakota, to a town with a bunch of people, you're coming with it, and she'd say, yeah, when are we leaving?
Sure.
I don't know. It's hard to say. And he did, to be fair, towards the end, he said, all the stuff I said, this only just applies to me. You got to find your own way. And I think that sort of hands-off approach, and he said, if someone says that, they found a way, they're selling you something. And I would agree with that.
For sure.
There's no one way PUA or MGTOW or anything. We're all individuals, and we have to figure out certain things for ourselves. Some guys who have a voracious appetite for sex will still need, even going their own way, to constantly have sex.
For sure.
Some guys never need to have sex. Some guys are in between. There are all kinds of different MGTOWs. We come from different countries, ethnicities, cultures, and so on. But yeah, there's a common thread of, and I would agree with him if that's what he's advocating, of you kind of being the main thing in your life, and the main feature in your life, and working towards your own goals and the things that you want to do without other people interfering, which really is difficult in a context.
Exactly.
I think. And then you come to a different culture, and I brought this up in my video today, most recently, about people had posted a question, why is there so much English-speaking content? And I said that, look, I'm not Hispanic, but I grew up with a lot of Hispanic people around me, and that is a ripe community. And then when I posted that video, I already got a lot of messages and people explaining that, say Latin American culture is very, very, it's obviously very macho. You're definitely a workhorse provider. Definitely the message needs to get out, and that idea of you being the centerpiece, I think, is really strong. And I think that could be maybe a uniting principle if you were to sort of unite at least his version of PUA, Rollo's, and MGTOW. But
for sure.
where there's that division, it, to me, seems to be in women are still some sort of focal point.
Exactly.
A primary focal point rather than just cheesecake or something, you do on the side, like playing racquetball twice a week.
Exactly. Well, they assume that women inherently add value. As long as you know how to manage them and, keep yourself as the focal point, they'll bring value. And that's, again, where I would disagree with most PUAs. Most women outside of sex, of course, for me personally, every guy's different, but for me personally, outside of sex, they don't add value. And saying that because I have a friend who's like a guy and she's a female, obviously, but the vast majority of women that I come across, if I have no interest in sleeping with them, there's just simply no reason to interact with them. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a question. We talked about this before. I mean, your friend would never describe herself as some sort of an adult, would she?
Oh, no. Every woman's hypergamous.
Yeah. But I mean, how, her being aware of these things, does she ever find herself rebuking herself or anything like that?
No, she pleads with every man she comes across to go his own way. She shares MGTOW content with them. Okay.
Even to her own detriment.
Yes, absolutely. So for example, her brother was about to get married, and she pleaded with him not to. She explained all of the divorce statistics, the fact that he would die far earlier than unmarried men. She pleaded with him to look at my lifestyle as a positive example to follow. He, of course, didn't take her up on the offer. She even, said, look, can you send him details of the MGTOW meetup you run? Say he can come along. So for sure, I mean, I'm not suggesting she's in a wall. Every woman is hypergamous. Absolutely.
But she seems to be willing to at least, in the case of her brother, it's a genetic relation.
For sure.
To say, look, this is dangerous territory, and she's willing to do this to herself as well, right? Does she actually say, don't get involved with me?
I wouldn't say, again, so she has a relationship with another guy who's actually my friend now as well. He's a very, very nice guy. And their relationship is actually, if I were to ever get into a relationship, which I just have no interest in doing right now, that would be how it would work. They don't live together. They just meet up when they want to meet up. And, do you know what I mean? So it's,
yeah.
So for me, if I were to ever have a relationship, that's what I would want, and that the women and I would probably live in actually separate cities, and maybe once a week we meet up, and then you have a couple of days together and do lots of fun stuff, or whatever kind of tickles your fancy, and then you maybe just SMS each other for the rest of the week. So actually, I find that it works out. But also actually, so she, my other male friend, and myself, whenever we go out, let's say, for example, we're in a bar, and this happens repeatedly, actually, probably about every single time we go out, we'll always come across a guy who's extremely blue pill, and, then we start asking him about his life, and, invariably this guy's like a workhorse provider of some sort, and then collectively we'll kind of talk that guy out of whatever dynamic he's in. We'll explain to him just the hypergamous nature of females, and she'll be helping us educate that guy. So, and I guess this is why she's such a good friend to me, because again, it's practicing what you preach. But for sure, in the same way that, females are hypergamous and men are driven by testosterone, we can never ever move away from the kind of basic biological drivers of the human. So that will always be there. And I guess it's the same thing which you said in your video earlier on today, that a girl writes what? Excellent intellect, hypergamous, absolutely. Is she in a walt?
Yeah, you told me about exactly how our hypergamy works. Yeah. You said if her boyfriend weren't to do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to be fair, I always think it's a question of degrees. So he doesn't need to make tons of money, but he needs to be doing something of note, of some kind of value, blah, 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 blah. It's just the famous line. I don't know a single female in describing her kind of guy that say something like, "Oh, he's got to be ambitious." Now, ambition can be loosely defined. So for some women, it's making $1 million or six figures a year. For others, it might just be producing amazing art. But you got to be busting your ass, right?
For sure.
If you're not busting your ass, not of any value.
For sure, and because I've been her friend so long, I've seen her hypergamy, and again that's why I always I guess there's a section of the manosphere that views hypergamy as an inherently evil thing. Actually, it just is what it is, and just make sure you're not on the sharp end of it as a guy. That.
Well, it's useful. It's been a useful, as I pointed out in that video. I mean, the reason why every woman is hypergamous is because it worked for them throughout the millennia.
Exactly.
It worked for them. It got them the offspring they wanted, and they were able to reproduce and be successful.
Agreed. And it also forced the male half of the species to massively, improve productivity. Just the idea that a woman won't want you unless you're making heaps of money or inherently productive, forced men to be productive, and that allowed us to have a vastly larger population. The invention of...
Well, this is what Rollo, I think, describes in his writings as sort of complementary, the quote-unquote idealistic love of men, the self-sacrificial, putting on a pedestal versus the opportunistic love of women. If you don't do this, I'm leaving. It somehow I suppose in some sense you can look at it as a compliment, but let's never forget the very real option of just leaving that all behind completely and just doing your own thing, going your own way.
For sure. And again, that's probably where Rollo doesn't make a distinction, or perhaps he has, I haven't read to that part of his body of work. He doesn't delineate between what is complementary and beneficial to the, or complementary between the genders and beneficial to the species versus what would kind of, I guess, encourage fulfillment and, happiness, as it were, within a guy. So you can have things which are beneficial to the species as a whole, such as hypergamy, but just inherently lethal to the guy on the wrong side of it.
Well, it's a type of naturalistic fallacy.
Yes, for sure.
It's because this is this way and this way, that is that way. You need to do it, and we all need to do it.
Yes.
And that just it just doesn't follow. There are plenty of things we don't do that would be beneficial. I don't deny that the social pair bond between men and women has done wonders for civilization. I don't deny that female hypergamy has pushed men to achieve and do stuff. That's all great for the annals of history, but for my life, my short life, it's completely irrelevant and has no bearing whatsoever. And this is something that neither the PUAs nor Rollo seem to grasp.
Agreed. I do agree with you there. So for sure, hypergamy has helped us get to where we are, but I simply will take no part in being part of a kind of woman's hypergamous jump in just in any way, shape, or form. I personally don't want to do that to the other guy who's on the other side of it, and I don't want her sucking my resources and time, just in any way.
Yeah, and I think this is important thing to highlight, that we don't fall prey to this naturalistic fallacy where we're basing our behavior on something that seems to work or has worked positively. For male labor in exchange for sex and resource. Yeah, it's worked wonders for civilization. What the hell does it have to do with you as an individual?
Agreed.
Not a whole lot.
Agreed. Well, it's like, I don't know if you remember kind of the time in the manosphere when rocking Mr. E kept saying that, MGTOW are dodging their marriage responsibilities. So for me, that he was arguing from a kind of naturalistic, point of view.
Oh, he did that all the time. This guy... Thinking of, it's been ages. The wizened one, as I refer to him, he looks so old these days. But he this was a so-called libertarian who would talk about obligations and societal duties and things, and I just thought, no. So he a lot of people get love, and in his case, it's probably partially self-justification.
Exactly.
Because he's married. He's got two daughters at least, and his woman makes more money than him. He's a house husband, to my knowledge. Maybe he's changed. Who knows? Really don't care about the guy anymore. But he was a perfect example of this. Because it's this way, we got to do it this way.
Exactly. Because our ancestors have always married, and somehow, for some reason, you have a marriage obligation because you have a penis and two testes. I couldn't quite understand his logic.
Well, there's a famous, I think I've used it for a video. There's a famous demotivator. It was in the early 2000s, I think that's when they became really popular, where, I'm trying to remember exactly what it said. Basically, it was the bull run in Spain where, you get chased, or Mexico, where you get chased by the bulls down the street, and it said something to the effect of, traditions, some are just plain stupid. And I think this reminds me of that. That there are always going to be people who are going to participate in that game. Most men are going to be, a workhorse provider or whatever, and all women are hypergamous, so they're going to suit that role fine.
For sure.
I think a small minority of men that are MGTOW, doesn't really matter that we're not following that pattern. I mean, what I always love are these arguments against, you're contributing to the destruction of the species.
Stefan Molyneux, who I happen to like some of his content, Stefan Molyneux. And
some of it, yeah, sure. Some of it.
Well, he made an argument that I just thought, come on, Stefan. he essentially, he had a caller come on, and the caller said, well, like the world's in a mess. Whether that's true or not, that's at least how the caller perceives the world. So the world's in a mess. We have wars all the time, and the social welfare system's going to pot. And I really don't want to bring a child into this world because everybody's highly irrational. People don't solve issues, through dialogue, and it's just such a crazy place. And Stefan Molyneux said, well, the way to kind of counter that is to have children and teach them rationality, and then we can counter that. And I thought, okay, so you're putting the onus on the rational people to outbreed the irrational in this world. That is under no certain...
They don't do that anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's frankly speaking, the poor, the uneducated, the less intelligent often. I was watching a documentary on these Kurdish women fighters who fight against ISIS, and ISIS, of course, terrified in their mythology that if they're killed by a woman, then they're going to go to hell. And one of these women who's going to be left off to train or something at a training camp, and then I never forget this. He said, how many children you have to the parents? I think he either said 8 or 9. It's a massive family, and I think this is just standard. Whereas we know that highly educated, intelligent people, particularly women, don't have tons of children.
Agreed.
They're lucky if they pop out 2.
Agreed.
Maybe 1 usually.
Agreed.
And there's no way that rational, intelligent, educated people are going to outbreed the counterpart. I mean, look at chav culture. I was telling you this story earlier today where, this is just typical. When I was working in the warehouse, and this girl that I was working with at the time had done some internship in Wales, and when she was there, some sort of child care thing, saw a little boy who was 5, I think, and said, saw, and who you're waiting for? Oh, my mother. And then she said, oh, your sister's coming. And the mother actually was the sister / the sister turned out to be the mother, who was 18 years old, had the kid when she was 13. And she was in a bit of shock. So as the mythical Jeebus said, the meek shall inherit the earth.
Sure. I actually had that in reverse once. So I went to my younger brother's school. This was, I think I was probably about, maybe about 18 or something at the time. So and I just went to. He had something going on that I had to go there for. I've forgotten the actual reason, but and I remember that his teacher came out and said, "Oh, are you his father?" And I thought, "Are you insane? I'm only 6 years older than the guy." But that was just what they had become used to dealing with in a city, London, where the parent was, only I guess slightly older looking than the child.
Yeah. Well, the UK has broken records in this regard. 25-year-old grandmothers and what have you. It's yeah. I mean, can you just give us, before we close up, a little hint? You said you were working at I thought it sounds fascinating, a video that's going to sort of talk about some of this, at least, before we close up.
Oh, yes, sure. That'll be great. Thank you. The actual video itself is looking into the epigenetic impact of calorific restrictions on civilizational temperaments and how this contributed to the rise of MGTOW. So what I've seen in most of the videos within the kind of manosphere is a narrative that MGTOW came to be because of, I guess, 2 main factors. The divorce rates just went through the roof, so no-fault divorce, and the family court system, and actually that there is evidence that the factors that led to MGTOW may actually be epigenetic, and that they may be physiologically driven by the intake of calories that I guess that our civilization has had. So over a very, very long period of time, our civilization. We experienced, or just the human race as a whole, for most of our history, we would have very, very regular famines. And what famines tend to do is to impact the hormones, very, very specifically in the male, the levels of testosterone. So, this kind of famine-like state that we've had for most of our civilization, it then led, of course, to the low testosterone. And this creates a very, very certain behavioral type within the male human, So when you have low levels of testosterone, you tend to have males who pair bond, for far longer. They make far greater parental investments. They tend to delay delay sex till well after puberty, and be monogamous. So it kind of creates a very, very specific civilizational temperament. And what has happened is that as we've increased our calorific intake massively, and I guess you're probably very, very aware of this, that when, for example, you're working out or bodybuilding, one of the ways that you increase your testosterone is that you massively increase your calorific intake.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fact. I mean, when bodybuilders, natural ones at least, go diet down to insane levels, like 5-6% body fat, I mean, your testosterone levels drop. Your body just doesn't have the nutritional resources to maintain optimal hormonal profile, and that has a profound effect. I mean, I've never been at that. I've never gone in my life below 10%, but I have a friend who bodybuilds, does natural bodybuilding, and he tells me when he's at 7, 8, 6, 5, he feels like shit. You feel like, I mean, you look quote unquote great, but you feel horrible.
Oh, for sure.
Because your hormones are out of whack. You're starving. It's not that fun.
For sure. And again, what tends to happen is that the testosterone has played a major factor. Just based on the research that I've seen, and it's going to be a very, very long video on why men going their own way rose up. So again, the kind of food scarcity issue, and just a lot of the issues that we've been seeing within the kind of research community with telomeres. So what tended to happen is that men who delayed, let's say, impregnating a woman until after the age of 40, the research now suggests that the telomeres are far longer, and of course this produces healthier offspring who are more, let's say, likely to withstand, diseases and have just a superior metabolic profile. So I'm just kind of looking into all of these issues and hopefully just trying to shed a little bit more light into, or possibly give a counter theory into why did MGTOW come about. So all of the reasons I've seen so far tend to be external. It's because somebody else was doing something and men responded. But actually, I think what we've seen in history or through evolution is that there are rarely external drivers that aren't preceded, or at least go on concurrently with internal drivers as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm really looking forward to that video, and I think a lot of people will be as well. Need new insights and new perspectives. You're absolutely right. Everything we've done so far has primarily been sort of social drivers. But as we know, everything's part of a feedback loop. Exactly. You can't have the social without the biological.
Exactly.
And the physiological.
Exactly. So my hope is that that video, at the very least, creates new dialogue into that path. But because again, the internal parts of our body dramatically impact how we respond to the social, to the social circumstances we face. Absolutely.
Okay, well, guys, thanks for listening. I hope you're looking forward to that video by CS as much as I am. It sounded really, really interesting.
Thank you.
And we will check you out another time. So everyone, thanks for listening.